Everybody, this review has been late, but I've had to play this game long enough to make sure that I can do the best possible review right now for all of you. And without further ado, without delaying this game any further, the game in question is none other than Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt. Aside from being a badass name, Witcher 3 had a lot to live up to. I never played The Witcher 1 because I never had a PC or a laptop. Well, I have a laptop, but I don't think it's powerful enough to play Witcher 1 to a standard I'd like. Well, I don't know, I never tried, but that's beside the point. The point I'm trying to make is that I did, in fact, play Witcher 2. And at first I was worried because I thought I'd have to play Witcher 1 to understand Witcher 2. But they did a good job of catching you up fairly quickly in Witcher 2 about the world and its characters. And when I got Witcher 2, I loved it. The second I played it, I knew this was a great game. I knew this was a game that I was going to regard highly of. And the more I played it, the better it became. And the thing that really caught me, this is a slight spoiler for Witcher 2. There's a choice there's 3 acts, and at the end of Act 1 you have to choose to go with 1 or 2 people. And depending on what choice you make, Act 2 is completely different. It's like, I don't mean like just like characters are changed out or anything like that. I mean literally, the entire game is changed in Act 2. Like, you're in a different location with different characters, different missions, different storylines. When I saw this, I was baffled, because there's been games that have done different outcomes for choices. Look at the Mass Effect series, Dragon Age, the Walking Dead Telltale games and all as such. But no game has ever gone to the length that Witcher 2 did. And I know this is a review for Witcher 3, and it seems to be like I'm talking Witcher 2, but I just have to say, this is what Witcher 3 had to live up to. And while there is no big game changing moment in Witcher 3 like in Witcher 2, where you could change the game completely depending on the choice, this game delivers in every other aspect imaginable. This game is incredible. Since the newest generation began, people have been fairly disappointed, it's safe to say. Well, not all people, but the majority of the gaming community have been disappointed with most of the games that have been released. But by God, this is the game. This is the game that you need to play. But the thing is, that's the trick part, because some people might never play The Witcher 2, because it was only released for PC and 360, so PS3 players or Nintendo players may never got the chance to experience it. And then you have to say, can you catch up with this game? Can you play this game without playing the previous Witchers? And honestly, you can. You won't get the same feeling as seeing these old returning characters or these locations or little storylines. But you can. But they've done an excellent job on catching you up like they did in Witcher 2. This is probably the best starting point for the series, because they've done such a good job of introducing new players to the game. But that's just all. Again, that's just all getting up to what the real point is. Let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's get to the meat of this game. First off, the story. It's great. Lately, in the last couple of years, there have been games that have done the father-daughter relationship very well. But the worrying part is that most of the relationships, the father and daughter, actually aren't related. Like the Joel and Ellie, they have that kind of relationship. Then you had Lee and Clementine in The Walking Dead. That was a good father-daughter type relationship. But I'm here to say, I believe Geralt and Ciri have the best father-daughter relationship ever seen in the game. You can just feel... You can feel the emotions between the two of them, and it's really nice and sweet half the time. And they really do this quite well. And Geralt, the voice actor, I heard a lot of people say that some people find the game boring because they think the voice actor is boring, but that's the point. The voice actor is perfect for the role, because Geralt is a Witcher. He's supposed to be emotionless, and the voice actor portrays this excellent. And he sounds badass, but also when he's being funny, you can tell. He changes the tone just slightly. You barely notice it, but it's that type of stuff that really shows how good the voice actor for Geralt is. And the voice acting is phenomenal all round. Like from Yennefer to Ciri to Triss Merigold to other returning characters I won't name. The voice acting is top notch, and it was the same with Witcher 2. This game is just amazing for voice acting. And the sound. Like, for example, when you use your spells, such as... Well, in this game they're called signs, but they're essentially the same thing. There's this sign called Ignite. It's basically you shoot fire. But when you unleash a wave of it, you hear the fire. It feels like you hear the fire erupting from your hand. And it's so realistic, and it's so crisp and clean. The sound of it, it's amazing. And speaking of that, the wind. Like the weather effects in this game are by far probably the best I've ever seen in a game. I mean, when you can hear the wind blowing, and I know it's a small thing, you hear that in every game, but combined when you hear the wind blowing, and then when you see the trees dynamically actually changing directions depending on what way the wind is blowing, and you see the grass blowing, you see the trees bending as the wind's blowing, and there's so many different weather effects in this game. The graphics in this game are phenomenal, especially the weather effects. I mean, gee, I must have stopped like 50 times at least in my first playthrough just to look at the weather. You're just like on your horse going through the field, then you turn the camera and you see this like beautiful sunset. You just stop for a minute and like, that's a damn fine looking sunset right there. You've had countless moments like this through the game, and there's so many different variations of weather. Well, I mean, it's not just sunny, rainy, dark morning. It's like you have like those shitty days in real life where it's like cloudy, where you see a bit of sunlight coming through, but it just feels dirty and it's just not good weather. You get that weather in the game. Any type of weather we get, it's in the game, and it's phenomenal. And a nice little touch that some games still don't do is when it rains, Geralt is literally wet. His clothes are soaked. They're not just magically dry. It's a little thing, but it's a nice touch to have in the game nonetheless. And speaking of the graphics, moving on, of course, the character models look great, the faces look realistic, the armour looks badass. And the last thing I love with this game, there's been other games you'll have a couple of armours. In this, there's a lot of different type of armours. And one of the cool things is they're specific Witcher gear from the houses of the Viper, the Bear, the Cat, and I believe the last one is the Griffin, of course. And I'm not counting the extra DLC armors that have been added, but basically this Witcher gear, when you first get it, you'll get the basic Witcher gear and you're like, this looks good, but I was expecting a bit more considering it's Witcher gear from the Witcher schools. But the thing is, you can actually buy maps and try for locations where you can find extra upgrades to upgrade the Witcher armor, and it actually looks different. It's not just a stat upgrade, it looks different, it looks more badass. There, I believe it goes from normal to enhanced, superior, and finally master crafted. And they're just little things, but there's so much in this game. And speaking of so much, my god, this map is massive. Now, originally going into this game, I thought the map was going to be a fully open world. Think like Skyrim, Fallout, where it's just all one big open world. While it's not, it's kind of more the Dragon Inquisition route. But the thing is, in Inquisition you had to click on the map for like 10 different locations. In this, it only happens 3 times. You choose between the Felon area, Skellige, and Kaer Morhen. And where there's a palace for Seaman and a small little area. But other than that, majority of the map, there's very few zones because the map is, they did a good job of condensing most of the map with as few loading screens as possible. And altogether, this map is one of the biggest video game environments you will ever witness. But it's not just the fact that it's big, but it's so dense. There's so many things to do. Like, there's a bunch of question marks situated around the map, and I'm talking like there could be 100 to 200, and this could range from bandit camps where you gotta save people, to we destroy monster nests to make the area safer, to so many other things, treasure hunts. But they're not even the main side missions, they're just the small things just to pass the time and upgrade and get better gear. There's so many side missions in this game, and each one is great because you can tell they put a lot of effort into even to the not so important side missions and Witcher contracts. But each one tells its own story, it going from really big, and this could range from like being a half an hour to an hour long to like 10 to 20 minutes. But each one leaves you satisfied with like it had a little bit of story, and it didn't feel like a waste of time, like it was just put there to pass the time. It feels like each one had effort put in. And the monster battles in this game are incredible. At the end of the Witcher contracts, you always face some form of monster most of the time, and these are epic. This is where the crafting comes in. Witcher is known for having to craft weapons, oils, and potions to help you in battle, and you will need to do it in this game. I'd recommend playing the game on the harder settings to get the full Witcher experience, but I say play it normal at first if you're a bit struggling, and then go back to a layer. Either way, you'll have a blast because the gameplay is great. One thing I'll say is, I wish the sword fighting is amazing, but sometimes it does feel like you're seeing the same kind of sword moves now and again. The combat selection isn't that extensive because it's just X and Y, heavy attack, fast attack. But saying that, it's badass, and you do always feel like you're kicking ass despite that. There's not much I can say is wrong with the game. I mean, this is a polished game. No, I did run into a couple of bugs, like late loading textures. Like sometimes I walk through a door and I can see it under the map because they didn't load probably, but that's far and few between, especially in a game this massive. And CD Projekt, right? they have probably half the team and half the budget of other big studios like Rockstar. Now GTA 5 is an amazing game, but CD Projekt Red didn't have close to that budget of GTA 5, and they did this amazing open world game with so much detail. And you want to know and one of the best parts is they have the best minigame ever put into an open world game. And you know what that is? Mother effing Gwent. Gwent is a trading card game in Witcher where, think of like kind of like Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering. It's kind of like that, but sadly there's no online. I really wish there was, because this game would be epic. Maybe just balance it a little, change certain rule types. But overall, Gwent is an awesome addition, and it's really addictive. I spent countless hours just trying to collect all the cards. And the best part is the minigame. In other games, the minigame was just shoehorned in, just added just for the sake of it, saying, "Oh look, we got a minigame in here, extra stuff." Yay. But most times they wouldn't be well done. But this game, you can tell this game's integrated perfectly into Witcher, because there are several times you can play Gwent in the main missions, but not just that, also in side missions. And there's like 5 to 6 side missions specifically. Okay, sorry with the lisp. Specifically for Gwent. I mean, like, collect them all. You have to collect 199 Gwent cards, and this can take a while. You could play merchants, main characters, all these people to get all these Gwent cards. Then there's like a Gwent tournament, play all the big players in a certain city. Gwent was, it's just a small thing, but this game was integrated so well. And the story overall, as I discussed earlier with Geralt the Ciri, the story is great. It's incredible. Act 1 is just big, epic, so much stuff to do. Act 2 then kind of slows down a bit. But it's so emotional. It's kind of like the relax, and it's a nice moment, but ends amazingly. I'll just say this, Battle of Kaer Morhen. That's all I'm saying. But when you get there, it is an epic moment in the game. I won't say much more, but it felt amazing. And the last act is good as well. It ends nice. I like the ending. You had a satisfying final boss fight, or boss as I used to say. And the ending, it was satisfying. In a world where the endings always seem to disappoint, this ending felt like satisfactory, and I felt like this was a good way to end Geralt's story. Overall, this game is worth the full purchase. You will not waste a penny on this game. This is worth full retail price, and you will not regret for a second. They're adding new DLCs every week, 2 new DLCs overall until they reach the 16 new mini DLCs they're going to add for free. And then there's 2 expansions coming that look like they're going to be great. This game is worth every cent, and I really recommend you go and buy it. Thank you for watching this review, and I hope I convinced you, if you haven't played already, to give this a try and the other games in the series. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.